Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, "You're too arrogant. And if you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power."
Hotep, which in the language of ancient Egypt means we come with justice in peace. Welcome to Freedom Now, a Saturday Pan-Africanist and Internationalist World Affairs program. Freedom Now is committed to the principle of the rights of all peoples and nations to self-determination. We thank you deeply for your contribution to KPFK, which permits programs like Freedom Now to stay on the air. In this era of corporate acquisition and co-optation of all dissident media, we provide the microphone, challenging their corporate and racist point of view. So stay tuned for our agenda here at Freedom Now.
This is Sister Tej with Freedom Now's agenda for this first 2026 Saturday, January 3rd. The central theme for today's program is Black resistance, not accommodation. Don't sell out Black people. We commence with our ancestor, Didan Kamati, in the African drumbeat historical calendar. We'll hear from Los Angeles-based Pan-African community organizers today. First, a message from the wisdoms of our dear sister, Nana Jumpy, the executive director of BAJI, Black Alliance for Just Immigration. Then, we interview Elder Ron Wilkins, former member of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and Los Angeles community organizer since the 1960s, especially during the Watts Rebellion. He joins us today to discuss his recent position paper titled, Black Freedom Struggle Has Ended. It's Now Accommodation Over Resistance. And later in the hour, we interview Dr. Melina Abdullah, professor of Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA and lead organizer with Black Lives Matter Grassroots, who joins us to discuss her recent column in the LA Progressive and Sentinel newspaper titled, I Used to Love Her, an open letter to Karen Bass and the Black political class. Our music clip mix includes MLK, Zap Mama, Madison Cali, Michael Jackson, Dead Prez, Mos Def, Immortal Technique, Common, Arrested Development, prison radio commentaries, and more. So sit back, phone a friend, and as always, we stand ready for revolution.
For all our studies, history is best qualified to reward all research. And when you see that you got problems, all you have to do is examine the historic method used all over the world by others who had problems similar to yours. And once you see how they got theirs straight, then you know how you can get yours straight.
This is Brother Didan with the African Drumbeat Historical Calendar for the week of January 6th. We provide this historical calendar to further enlighten the listening audience on authentic contributions of people of color and the working class to the objective of a classless society rooted in peace, egalitarianism, and self-determination. We urge you to join an organization that's struggling for righteous social change. January 6, 1931, the Scots Borough Boys trial occurs, where 9 African youth were accused of raping 2 European women. Immortalized by the blues singer Leadbelly, NBC's TV movies, books such as The Killer Mockingbird and Allen Ginsberg, this case drew national attention led by the peoples of Harlem, many of whom were first-generation migrants from the South, and later the Communist Party. This case was the first time that black men accused of rape in Alabama were not executed. January 7, 1891, Zora Neale Hurston was born. She got out of a jaywalking ticket once by saying, "I saw white folks crossing on the green light, so I just assumed the red was for me." She was a leading African folklorist, novelist, and the first black woman anthropologist in the United States, who recorded African folk traditions and cultures of the diaspora, especially in the United States and in Haiti. Her most notable novel, The Eyes Were Watching God, which contained active female protagonists and used black English as the language of her tales. January 8, 1886, Noble Drew Ali was born. Noble Drew Ali founded the Moorish Science Temples of North America, a continuation of the Islamic traditions in the United States. These Islamic traditions began with the importation of African prisoners of war from Islamic countries of West Africa who had superior agricultural skills for the plantation economy of slavery. Noble Drew Ali's movement gave rise to continued Islamic currents with Master Fard Muhammad, the founder of the Nation of Islam, the largest black nationalist theocratic organization in the United States today. January 8, 1959, the victory of the Socialist Cuban Revolution occurs, smashing the United States and mafia-backed Baptista regime and destroying Cuba, being used as an island of sex, drugs, and gambling vices for U.S. tourists. January 9, 1905, the Russian Revolution breaks out in St. Petersburg, where the historical forces of the workers and revolutionary intelligentsia unite to overthrow the Tsarist feudal regime and build the first socialist state in modern times. Here the working class and peasants, 99% of the population, becomes the rulers, not the capitalist class. The USSR within 20 years moved from being one of the poorest nations in Europe to a world power, providing unabated support for the anti-colonial liberation movements of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. January 9, 1912, the African National Congress, the ANC of South Africa, was formed. The ANC is the oldest liberation movement in Africa. 97 years later, the ANC demonstrates that the power of the people is greater than the combination of white settler rule and Western European and U.S. combined support to maintain apartheid. The ANC is the ruling party of South Africa today. The ANC was defined by the U.S. as a terrorist organization, with the U.S. CIA orchestrating the capture and imprisonment of Nelson Mandela. January 9, 1922, Sékou Touré, the Prime Minister of Guinea, who led this former French West African country to independence, was born. The Democratic Party of Guinea, of which Brother Touré was a leader, was the only French-speaking African country to sever all ties to the former colonial master, thereby ensuing French rage. Months before independence, the French military stripped their former colony of electrical, plumbing, dug up the roads, buildings, and all administration, attempting to destroy the infrastructure of Guinea. This was set as an example to all French colonies of the price you pay when you seek total independence as opposed to a Commonwealth status with the French. This rape of this country strengthened and fortified the Guinean people, and Sékou Touré is part of the leadership, together with Ghana, the Congo, Mali, Tanzania, Algeria, the list is long, of those revolutionary Pan-African countries who during the 60s fought against U.S. and European imperialism and fought for building an all-African Union government, which objectively incorporating 53 African countries into one United States of Africa, thereby providing a massive bulwark against the oppressions of any Africans worldwide and U.S. imperialism. January 10, 1894, the African kinship group known as the Tuareg rise up in armed struggle against the Portuguese in the country of Bissau, which sets the historical antecedent for the rise of Amilcar Cabral and the PAIGC. The Tuareg are a desert Muslim people who have consistently fought in Mali, Niger, Algeria against French colonialism. The Tuareg are an example of the synchronization of Islam and traditional African values and culture. For instance, women in the Turok society have a strong and free position, and she decides over her own life. Men, not women, wear veils over their face in public. Women play a dominant role in their society where there is a matrilineal descent pattern. January 10th, 1860, Henrietta Vinton Davis was born. She was an actress, teacher, and a Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League leader. UNIA and ACL was the largest mass organization of African people in any country and any historical period in humankind history. She founded the Black Theater Company and was the director of the Black Star Shipping Line, a remarkable achievement in the era of segregation. January 10th, 1864, George Washington Carver was born. Brother Carver, under a segregated U.S., was a scientist, botanist, inventor, and educator who revolutionized agriculture in the U.S. by his promotion of alternative crops to cotton, including the peanut and sweet potato, thereby increasing the quality of the soil through rotation. He invented over 100 products to be used from peanuts, including cosmetics, dyes, paints, plastic, gasoline, and nitroglycerin. His work destroyed the widespread stereotype that blacks were intellectually inferior to whites. January 11th, 1959, the contemporary movement for the independence of Puerto Rico was launched as Puerto Ricans grow weary of the colonized status within the U.S. empire. January 11th, 1965, poet Lorraine Hansberry, author and dramatist, dies. Her works include Raising in the Sun and To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. Her themes include anti-racism, women's rights, and African liberation from colonialism. This has been the African Drumbeat Historical Calendar here at Freedom Now, 90.7 FM in Southern California and 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara. Please join us in a unity chant of Amandala Awetu, which means the power belongs to the people.
And now we'll go to a clip from Sister Nana Jumpy, the Executive Director of BAJI, the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, with an important message.
Black people, I hope that we are getting clear, if we're not clear already, that selling out black people is bad. It is a bad thing. Don't do it. Stop doing it if that's what you're doing. This is the reflection that came in my mind as I read about the alleged strike, and I believe that there is some confirmation for it, alleged airstrike by the U.S. in Nigeria, a bombing in Nigeria by the United States following this claim that we all know is false, that Christians are being slaughtered and therefore the U.S. has to come in and support. A narrative, a false narrative that was carried by Nicki Minaj, famously, even at the level of the UN. Not just her, right? I'm pointing her out because this is part of what this regime has perfected, is using people that are cultural icons, using people that are powerful politically, heads of state of countries, majority black countries, etc., to do its bidding. That includes dividing us and confusing us so that we may be okay with what is nothing more than a racist grab at black land, black resources, and if they have to use black minds, black bodies, and black souls in order to get those resources at the expense of black people, they absolutely do and will. And we have to stop being complicit, and we have to call out complicity, and we have to push back against complicity. If that means that we're calling our representatives in the U.S., that's what that means. If that means that we're calling embassies in the U.S., that's what that means. If that means that we are in home countries, whether, and you know, home countries, if you're African American, is the United States, right? If you're a U.S. citizen and you're black, is the United States. Home countries, if you're not from the United States, is where you come from, right? So even in home countries, if you got to hit the streets, if you got to reach out to government, if you have to write op-eds, whatever you are able to do in order to push back and to say, hell no to this apparent racist fascist takeover at our expense and with the complicity, sadly, of some people who are prominent in our communities and in our countries and in our world. That's what you need to do, because we have to resist. It is time right now to flex, not fear. There are roughly 10 million Black immigrants and their children in the United States. Are we just going to sit, suck our teeth, shake our heads, mumble under our breaths, and hold on tight to our visas that mean nothing at this point in order to let our countries be sold out, bombed, exploited, and destroyed? Does that make sense? Or are we going to actually speak up and speak out? African American, understand that you may look and think that this is not your fight, but there's no such thing as a Black fight on this world. In this world, there's just a Black fight for one part of the Black world. That's not how it works, and particularly not when that fight is coming out of the United States of America. People like Randall Robinson understood that. Look him up if you don't know who he is. And so many others understood that we are all connected, and have understood from time of enslavement till today that we are all connected. And so it is time for all of us to know that we must resist as a Black world wherever we are. Whatever issues we have with each other, we must shed them. We must work them out and be in solidarity with one another, lockstep, because it's actually not solidarity. It is also self-interest. Time to flex, not fear. Let's get it.
This is Sister Tej with Freedom Now, and we're so honored to be joined back here on Freedom Now with our Ron Wilkins. He's a longtime Pan-Africanist and Africanist and internationalist organizer who's organized with the Community Alert Patrol, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, the Patrice Lumumba Coalition, and so much more. He has hosted for over 10 years, continent to continent, on KPFK, and he is a heralded community organizer in Los Angeles since the 1960s, especially during the Watts Rebellion. And so thank you for all your work, and it's such an honor to be joined by you, Ron Wilkins, back here on Freedom Now.
And thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be able to have been invited and to express some ideas and relay my information to a broader population. I also want to make it known that I worked with Brother Didan Kamati way back, who of course pioneered Freedom Now, which you're carrying on his great work. Brother Didan is very praiseworthy. He's someone that put in an enormous amount of work, and sadly to say, he's probably turning in his grave now at what is going on with our people and how they've almost turned completely around and not carried on and intensified the struggle that he was very much a part of and very much spearheading.
And so that's what brings us here today on Freedom Now, is the position paper that you recently published called The Black Freedom Struggle Has Ended. It's Now Accommodation Over Resistance. And so can you give our listeners a brief overview of your paper?
Right. What I pointed out in my paper is that rather than continue to resist oppression, that most Black people have not only let down our great ancestors who risked their lives, were often tortured and punished and imprisoned and killed for expressing their beliefs and struggling against the system, that many Black people now have not just let them down, but have actually joined the other side. We've got people who are not only who join the U.S. military and line up with white soldiers who are descendants of the very people who enslaved us for over 300 years. 300 years is a very long time, but it's interesting when I say that, it's a very jolting kind of thing to say, because that's a very long period of time. I would be resisting my oppressors if they enslaved me for a day or a week, let alone 300 years. But it's a history that has been thrown away by many of our people, who now not only join the enemy by joining his military, but also becoming police officers, becoming ICE agents, I point out in my paper that, of course, the southwestern United States was once Mexico, and 55% of Mexico, it was 55% of Mexico, and it was taken by force by the United States. And black people, too, black people are ICE agents, but interestingly enough, the most consistent historical ally that we've had have been Mexican people. Most people don't know that many of the leaders, I don't want to get into this too much, but many of the leaders of the Mexican independence struggle were Afro-Mexicans. And they used to, in fact, when the Spanish fought the Mexican forces, they often referred to them as Ejército Moreno, or the Dark Army, because it was not only a move by Mexican people to free themselves from Spain, but also to eliminate slavery. So black people ran to the front lines. And so Mexican people not only benefited in a major way from black participation in that struggle, but during that struggle for independence, many blacks who were enslaved, thousands of us who were enslaved in the United States, fled south into Mexico, and Mexican people embraced us, fed us, defended us, and so on. So it's an interesting history that has been hidden that we need to know more about. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. Aside from that, what I point out is that psychologically, many black people have become, I don't know, Europeanized, whitenized, whatever you want to call it. They celebrate all the European holidays. They live from one white holiday, one European holiday to the next. During the 4th of July, black people set off more fireworks than white people. And it was the whites in this country that got their independence from Britain that was being celebrated. And our people were in chains and in ropes and being insulted. Our women were being raped. Our mothers, our sisters, our daughters were being raped by these people, but we have embraced them. And so it's very interesting so I point this out in my paper, in this document that I just recently released, but I also go on to say how it's just a shame. It's very disgusting, and it's a very uncomfortable thing to see what's going on right now. What I also say in the paper is that things are, fortunately, even though blacks in the United States have let down the struggle and have, instead of fighting the enemy, have joined the enemy by embracing all that the enemy celebrates and embraces, but that things are beginning to change. And in other parts of the world, especially in the African motherland, we see African governments getting rid of corruption and dictators and taking charge of their destiny and beginning to use their resources for themselves. And we see an alliance formed in West Africa, the Sahel Alliance, led by Ibrahim Traore, who's the leader of Burkina Faso. We see that alliance, the members of that alliance, not only Burkina Faso, but Mali and Niger and other countries now following suit by kicking out European and United States military forces and shoring up their own defenses and having their economies benefit their people. And they're being backed by some powerful allies, principally China and Russia and even North Korea. And the United States is desperate as can be, and that is why it's planning to make the move against Venezuela that it's planning and other actions. But so the future is bright because not only are these West African nations rising up and taking control of their destinies and controlling their resources, but we also have the BRICS phenomenon. So the U.S., the dollar, has now been pushed off center stage, and more countries in the world are part of this BRICS alliance, this new economic alliance, and that looks very good for the formerly dispossessed in the world. And so that's what essentially I point out in my paper.
Thank you for also describing the trajectory from what is happening in the US and then across to the continent. And so just to get into more detail from that overview, if you can kind of describe a little bit more in your analysis, the active collaboration by Black people themselves that are tied to, as you mentioned, the psychological component, but also the mental and cultural components that enforce the accommodations that are being made on the Black political ideology. So can you dive a little bit more into what you see in the parts that are the active collaboration?
Well, certainly police officers, we are in great numbers on the police forces, not only in Los Angeles, but around the country. And the policing culture dates back to 1704, where you had in the colonies that were established here in the United States, and what's called the United States. And I call this is a criminal empire, because the United States was organized by criminals who colonized the country, who committed genocide against the indigenous population, and who enslaved our people. But they had originally in the Carolinas, they had what was called slave patrols, and they had plantation patrols and plantation police and runaway slave patrols. And the present day police forces in the United States embody all that. And they're still killing our people. It's happening on an almost daily basis somewhere in this country. And what did the police do then? They imposed curfews, police curfews. They put down rebellions. They tracked runaways. They squashed, as I said, uprisings and rebellions. And that's precisely what police do today. And we are part of these police forces. We also, by the way, interestingly enough, and you see it everywhere, we've developed psychologically, we call each other nigga, and we don't, whether it's in a friendly way or in a way where we're putting down one another, it's nigga, nigga, nigga. I'm hearing that all the time, and it's very disgusting and discouraging. It's very unsettling, very unnerving. We use all these drugs that they once put us in prison for. Now they have legalized it. They promote drugs on billboards, and people who are demoralized and who suffer economically from unemployment and other things are apt to pick up drugs. And so what's going on too, in terms of our behavior, as you mentioned, the psychological stuff, many of our people have become very rude. We race up and down the streets in these cars. We play loud music. We cut other people off in traffic. And if you complain about being cut off, they're ready to shoot you or call you a bunch of names. We've become very selfish. We've become very rude. These are the attitudes. These are the psychological attitudes of those who oppressed us. And now we've adopted them. We're very selfish and self-centered. Some of us played loud music all night long. And I look sometimes at people and I say, look, brother, how come I got to hear your music? I got a radio. Why can't you turn that down? Show me some respect. Give me some love. But so this is the attitude. Psychologically, we're in very bad shape. And, it's very interesting, too. I was going to say that we become ICE agents and Border Patrol people. And it's very interesting because if anybody's an illegal alien, and it's the whites who have settled in 55% of what was once Mexico, the southwestern U.S. So these are the things I try to point out in the paper and try to get people to think about, because we're not doing well at all as a people. But as I said, internationally, the picture has brightened, and we see it more and more every day with what is happening and unfortunately, our people in West Africa are paving the way forward for us.
And we just want to remind our listening audience that we are speaking with Ron Wilkins about his paper, Black Freedom Struggle Has Ended. It's Now Accommodation Over Resistance. So we do want to get to the international question as well, and kind of tied into what does resistance look like now, not just historically, from the position here on the land in the U.S., and also in relation to what you mentioned about what's happening in the Sahel Alliance and BRICS is the future as well. So what does resistance look like now?
It looks very good. It looks very good. Because not only are the three nations that I mentioned that have formed the Sahel Alliance paving the way and improving things dramatically and enormously for the people in their countries, but other African countries are looking at them and joining up with them and expanding this three-nation alliance. So that's looking up. And as I mentioned before, there are other powers that are certainly capable of checking Europe and the United States when they try to move back in and make military moves against these nations, because these nations are supplying a lot of arms to those countries and helping train their troops and all of that, and willing to back them up. And I have to say this, I have nothing but admiration for Russia and China, who never colonized Africa. Some people will quickly say, well, they have their interests too. Well, no, they negotiate certainly Africa has resources that they can use and they benefit from as well, but they have approached Africa in very respectful ways as trading partners. So I feel very good about that. So again, as I said, the international situation is so good that I say in my paper that I'll go to my grave when that time arrives with a smile on my face. And it'll be because of what is happening in the African motherland and not what has happened and what continues to happen here in the United States.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us today. We've been speaking with Ron Wilkins, longtime Pan-Africanist, Africanist, and internationalist organizer who's organized with SNCC, the Community Alert Patrol, and Patrice Lumumba Coalition, and longtime Los Angeles organizer since the 1960s. Thank you so much for joining us back here on Freedom Now.
Thank you. All the best.
This is Sister Flora, and you are listening to Freedom Now at KPFK 90.7 FM in occupied Mexico, including Los Angeles, 98.7 FM Santa Barbara, 93.7 FM in San Diego, and streaming live on the web at kpfk.org. Today's program, as well as 10 prior editions, can be reheard at kpfk.org/audio archive, and scroll down to Freedom Now. For a truly alternative international perspective on world affairs, check out RTTV Russia, CCTV China, and online at Presna, Latina Cuba Telesur Venezuela, News 24 South Africa, and Press TV Iran.
And up next are prison radio commentaries.
Hey, my name's Ron Wilkins with the AMPA and our Prison Sweat Lodge campaign. Last Monday, December 22nd, I was arbitrarily targeted by a chaplain of my own faith group, Jonathan DeSalle, who's employed here at SCI Fayette. While at our Native American feast meal, I elected not to participate because of his lack of knowledge of how to hold a feast in traditional manner. After addressing my concerns about the use of styrofoam cups during a sacred, what's supposed to be indigenous ceremony, I was pressured into violating my tribal beliefs by to drink water out of a styrofoam cup. Instead of respecting my belief and concern, my rights were violated as he asked me to please leave. I did fakingly knock my cup on the floor, attempting to make it appear accidental in order to stop him from pressuring me to drink what I believe to be contaminated water polluted with forever chemicals, which is not traditional to me. I will be pursuing a lawsuit against this individual, where I feel it was my right to decide which religious practice I wish to participate in or not participate in. It's my position that this chaplain could have afforded me the opportunity to step off to the side, which I asked him to allow me to do. I'm sharing this in hopes that things like this never happen again to anyone else.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
That which is to come. It is foolish for us to predict what is to come, for life is full of variables, and none can see the whole. But sometimes, some things are so clear that they impress themselves upon the mind and leave a mark that cannot be undone. This seems to be such a time. The turning gears of this machine are not just the ruinous effects of tariffs, but the expressed intentions of the ultra-rich class to transform the world of work through the introduction of AI, artificial intelligence. These devices represent a profound change in the working place, so much so that AI will soon replace some 40% of entry-level jobs in the economy, already replacing college students and college graduates who, despite their degrees, can't find a job. This reality was reflected in a public statement made recently by the world's richest man, Elon Musk, when he said, work will be optional. What this means in the real world is that for the first time since the Industrial Revolution, capital is able to use technology like AI, non-human labor, to generate its massive profits. These non-human technologies don't sleep, they don't eat, they don't take vacations, they don't strike. They perform complex tasks as long as energy sources can be provided. Yes, work may be optional, but what about eating? Is that too optional? AI only eats energy and data. The ultra-rich are reshaping the world literally before our very eyes, and not for the better. Marx said that capitalism breaks down all Chinese walls. In other words, it destroys anything in its hunger for profits. In Capital, Marx recounts how the working class came into being. It isn't natural like trees or grass. It was formed by the theft of the common lands, of the common people, the so-called commoners. Their lands, the commons, were walled off, and Parliament outlawed the wood and growth on the trees to commoners by making it a crime. These laws and practices were designed to force commoners into noisy, dirty factories to work for manufacturers of products. In fact, Marx explains that governments terrorized the commoners by brutish punishments like hanging for pickpockets, who, by the way, were so bold that they picked pockets during public executions. Let's bring it back to the present and the future. What happens to the working class when there are no jobs? Do you expect the uber-rich to take care of them? Really? Do you expect the super-rich, most of whom don't even pay taxes, to take care of you? We shall see economic dislocation and destruction like generations haven't seen since the 1930s. We live in an era not of casino capitalism, nor even crony capitalism. This is gangster capitalism, where everything not nailed down is stolen. That's the real reasons behind tariffs, to take what is takeable, period. The investor class is betting its money on AI, non-human labor, to enrich itself perpetually. With love, not fear. This is Mumia Abu-Jamal.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
False charges and manufacturing crimes, a Virginia model. Today is December 30th, 2025. I have previously reported about the Virginia Department of Corrections staff issuing false charges, most often as a form of retaliation. It is just one of the myriad abuses allowed, unchecked, and encouraged. As the Virginia DOC scrambles to manufacture any sort of positive image, it continues to fail at its goals and purposes. As a means of manufacturing that cover of positive image, as well as giving the illusion of controlling the flow of drugs through its staff mules, the Virginia DOC has, for several months now, waged a campaign against legal over-the-counter drugs such as Tylenol, Zyrtec, and the like. Another bait-and-switch routine born of failure and desperation, costing $1.5 billion tax dollars per year. The Virginia DOC is dangerously overcrowded. The Virginia DOC has lied to the public, claiming that it is understaffed. Likewise, as illicit drugs easily find their way through the gates and staff pockets, false charges such as 861.1, 122A, quote, possession of unauthorized or unprescribed drugs, help to pad the numbers, especially when drugs sold over the counter are strangely treated as if they require a prescription. They do not, but the Virginia DOC make up their own rules, the majority of which are widely illegitimate and moreover prove that the Virginia DOC is not about justice or restoration or any sort of truth. Every supermarket and even gas station convenience store sells Tylenol and other similar pain relief. Non-narcotic and non-addictive 10-year-old child could pick these up with little question. The Virginia DOC, superseding the FDA and other far more knowledgeable institutions, has decided on its own to take such bizarre steps. There is no justification for such nonsense, and no doubt that were the Virginia DOC to be asked, they would give some lame, provably false, statements such as, the safety and security of our blah blah blah, where safety clearly does not exist, and, quote, security has become the cheap euphemism shield that they hide behind. Perhaps the Virginia DOC needs a good old-fashioned data leak. $1.5 billion annually, 27% of the entire state budget, so that your sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, mothers, and fathers can be harassed and targeted over Tylenol. This charge is nothing light and can really make it life difficult for the victim. Yet again, we see the Virginia DOC is not keeping Virginians safe. In fact, the Virginia DOC and a majority of its staff represent real and immediate threats to Virginians across the state, not only through illegal activities such as these that I report regularly, but through the enormous waste of resources, most of which never make it to the overpopulated prisons' captive populations. The better majority of Virginia citizens know the Virginia DOC is a serious problem and a threat. They know it serves no legitimate purpose beyond a cover for corruption, and they know exactly how it needs to be dealt with. That includes more than just a few politicians who seem to lack the courage to do what must be done. Manufacturing criminals over Tylenol and other legal non-prescription drugs is not on the to-do list. My name is David Anarelli, davidanarelli.wordpress.com, contributing writer at prisonjournalism.org, and you can check me out by Googling my name. Thank you very much. Happy holidays.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
Assata by Kevin Rashid Johnson. Every little girl should know her name. From the bowels of repression and calamity she came. Wrung poetic lyrics of love from raw pain. From a system designed to break, she remained untamed. Gave herself over wholly to our freedom fight. So the pigs tried to assassinate her that night. On the Jersey Turnpike, alongside Zayed, who they actually fled as Sunyata fled. Shot her point blank, hands up, don't shoot. Her will to live for the people, embedded limb to root. A true comrade sister, she survived the impossible. Brutal abuse, neglect, even by pigs in the hospital, where they beat her, tortured her, even threatened rape. But she clung to life, endured racist hate. A continuation of a long train of fighting oppression. From the earliest age, she learned the lessons of resistance, of persistence, of never giving in, of daring to struggle, of deserving to win. Organized with the Panthers, resisted chauvinist men, recognized that our fight was for the future of our children. For the armed struggle, she was all the way down. Joined the Black Liberation Army, fought in the underground. They put her in a men's prison, thought it would break her will, but it made her stronger, turned her mind to steel, where she molded, honed it, made it razor sharp, so her wit would sit level with her heart. Every effort to stop her was doomed to fail, conceived a beautiful child from inside a cell. She embodied the thing slavers most fear, the will to war, to protect our kids. Even thought a cell would stop her, but it wasn't to be. The love of the people set her free, and surpassed borders to the Cuban Isle, where she found asylum to live free in exile. The meaning of her name fits her to the score. She who struggles, Assata Shakur. This is Kevin Rashid Johnson, coming to you from within America's Gulag Archipelago. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All power to the people.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
Yes, yes, y'all, and you don't stop. To the beat, y'all, and you don't stop. Yes, yes, y'all, and you don't stop. A 1, 2, y'all, and you don't stop. Yes, yes, y'all, and you don't stop. Until the beat comes, says to be the short shot. Come on, come on, come on, come on.
This is Sister Tej with Freedom Now, and we're honored to be joined back here on Freedom Now by our sister, Dr. Melina Abdullah, professor of Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA and lead organizer with Black Lives Matter Grassroots. Welcome back to Freedom Now, Sister Melina.
Thank you, Sister Tej. So good to be with you.
Thank you for all the work that you do and all the ongoing organizing, especially addressing the police state. So we salute you for all of that work, and we're honored to have you here today to discuss your recent publication in the LA Progressive regarding a letter to Mayor Karen Bass titled, I Used to Love Her. And so can you talk to our listening audience about your publication?
Sure. So the column I Used to Love Her was published in both the LA Sentinel and the LA Progressive, and just got word that it's going to be picked up by Black Press USA. So it's going to be in many, many Black papers around the country. But really what it's about is the Black political class, which in many ways often betrays Black community and betrays what it knows to be its own values. So Karen Bass, the reason it's titled I Used to Love Her is, of course, that title comes from the Common song that's about hip hop, right? So I love the true version of who Karen was, the Karen that I knew. I moved to Los Angeles in late 94 and kind of settled here in early 95, got to know Karen in 96 because I used to run a youth program, and Karen's Community Coalition was part of the network of youth serving organizations that I was a part of. And I saw her, Karen's about 19, 20 years older than I am. And I saw her as someone who was doing really righteous work in community. And if people remember why Community Coalition was founded, it was really out of Karen's work as an organizer that I came to understand how true it is that the safest communities are the communities with the most resources, not the most police. Community Coalition, the name is actually longer. It's Community Coalition and Substance Abuse Prevention, right? So the way that, and Karen being a public health worker, the way that she saw addressing things like the crack cocaine epidemic and the violence that comes with it is creating organization and developing resources and community. And so my own understanding about what's needed for a community actually comes from Karen's example. And we went ahead and developed a friendship. I was really grateful to have her as somebody who I saw as a role model, and I came to love. So when I say love, I don't mean that theoretical love like in theory. I love all of humanity. In truth, but in theory, you can love all of humanity, and there's people that you actually love practically. And Karen's one of those people that I loved practically. And even when she was elected to office and we saw her making compromises, there was kind of an understanding or a desire to understand. Even when she was in Congress, and as we were, now Black Lives Matter is born, and we continue to do work, and Karen kind of came for us. She was one of the first ones to get on national television and say defund the police was I think she said the stupidest thing she's ever heard or something like that, right? But she called me and apologized, and we talked about how to move forward in righteousness. But where we are now with Mayor Bass, someone who we have had access to, that's all she's given us is access, right? When she ran, she came to my house. We had a small group meeting that included my children where we talked about how we do need to defund the police and what will she do for abolitionism, right? And we continue to kind of have these conversations. We were one of the first meetings she took. It might have been the first meeting she took after taking office. She's been to the People's Budget workshops, and we delivered the People's Budget findings to her each of her years in office. And she understands, but where she is now is she's betraying those values. And no amount of communicating with her, because since that article was published, since the column was published, I have lots of folks who say, well, you should just talk to her. Well, we have been talking with her, but what we're seeing is a betrayal in the sense that at the same time as city workers who are not cops are being furloughed, at the same time as the promise of the Olympics coming to Los Angeles, that it would increase the wages of workers who were doing that hard work of tourism, as that's being reneged on. She is not only giving raises to police, she's also increasing the police budget. She appointed the police chief. If we said, if you're going to appoint anybody, please don't appoint Jim McDonald. That's who she appoints. To the oversight body, the police commission, she's now appointed two avowed Zionists to that police commission. And so we're beyond kind of having private conversations or small group conversations. We have to summon Karen Bass back to the values that she knows to be righteous, and say that if you're doing the work of the police state, then you're not our friend, even if you used to be our friend, even if we used to love you.
What's your analysis of what happened to change tracks or to not have the alignment based on the values that she started with?
So the full title of the column is An Open Letter. I Used to Love Her, an open letter to Karen Bass and the Black political class. So I want to be clear that I know that they try to frame things as you only have two choices, right? So if we think about the recent presidential election, they said it's Trump or Biden or Trump or Harris, and those are your choices. Those are not choices that I'm willing to make. I'm not willing to vote for either genocider, right? I'm not willing to do that. This is the same thing that's happening when we look at local politics. So when we look at the mayoral race, they say, well, if you're not for Karen, and I can't be for these policies that Karen has advanced. In Los Angeles, again, this LAPD under Karen Bass just this year, LAPD has surged in police killings by 70%, 70. Shootings of people by police are now, we have 70% increase. I think 48 was what we closed out the year with. This is crazy, where they're saying the only excuse that they're giving is, well, it's not as bad as it was in the early 90s. Well, do you remember the early 90s? Is that what we're comparing ourselves to, right? And so I want to be clear, I'm not saying that we would rather have Rick Caruso, right? Or even Austin Butner. What I'm saying is neither of these choices are acceptable, and we have to demand better. Yesterday, Mamdani was sworn in New York. And, you know, I know that there's criticisms of Mamdani, and you've heard some things that are not all in line, completely in line with what many of us in the streets believe. However, what he does present is the truism that you don't just have to toe the Democratic Party line. And I know we live in a city that is supposedly nonpartisan, but it's not really. You don't just have to be a liberal or a conservative. You can be a progressive and win. You can even be a radical meaning that we want to radically transform. We want to pull from the root, right? And change entire systems. You can win. In fact, even Karen Bass, she won in 2022 without the support of police. So miss me with the idea that she needs police support. She doesn't. She didn't win with police support the first time. And so what we're trying to say is that we have to have better choices, and we have to be courageous enough to make better choices. I believe what Karen and others of the Black political class and of, you know, those who are entrenched, not just Black people, it's not just confined to Black people, but that's who I was writing to and for. How I think they justify it to themselves is that if you don't elect me, you're going to get a Rick Caruso. And aren't I better than a Rick Caruso? And they think that it's more important that they be in office than that they actually serve the values that are important to community. Well, for me and for many of us, it's almost worse to have a smiling face on our oppression. I'd rather understand my oppressor to be my oppressor. I'd rather make it very clear that, you know, remember Richard Riordan? Everybody knew you can't trust Richard Riordan, right? I'd rather have it be that than say, oh, we like Karen. It took a long time, but people are waking up to say Karen Bass has done almost nothing, next to nothing that benefits Black people, Indigenous people, working class people, people of color, poor people in the city of Los Angeles. And if she doesn't do what we need her to do, then there's not use for her in office. And it doesn't mean that I don't love her as a human being. I do. I'll not ever not love her as a human being. However, I don't want her as my mayor if, you know, my son now has to walk home from school with a target on his back because of her policies.
And so where are you now with your position as an organization as well, who specifically fights the police state, and that you've come to the conclusion that you've tried to communicate with her and that nothing gets done? And so as we're entering in 2026, how do you see this rolling out and how that impacts your organizing work as well?
Well, I mean, we never thought that like the answer to Black liberation is going to be the election of a mayor, right? We never thought that. But we did hope that we'd be able to get some things through, like the reallocation of the budget, right? We did think that there would be at least some harm reduction that came as a result of people who understand and have said that they're committed to progressive values being in office. So the answer to us is as we continue to organize, right? We have to keep organizing and we have to keep pushing. I think that you see it bearing fruit in some ways, that we now have 4 progressive members of the Los Angeles City Council who actually voted against the budget increase for LAPD. So that was Nitia Raman, Isabel Jurado, who unseated Kevin De Leon, right? Remember, that was a result of our work, like pushing Kevin out of office, the racist, the anti-Black racist who got caught on tape. And so Isabel Jurado was one of the ones who voted against the increase for police, along with Hugo Soto Martinez and, of course, Ionesis Hernandez. We haven't had a block that large before, and we stand to gain some seats in that block in the coming election. Black Lives Matter, grassroots Black Lives Matter Los Angeles has never been a body that invests itself in electoral wins as the solution, right? But we are going to push and hold accountable elected officials. And so we'll continue to do that, even as we work to organize from the outside to make sure that people understand that we have power. So next on the horizon for us is January kicks off our People's Budget season. So at peoplesbudgetla.com, there'll be a new survey that goes up that'll launch on King Day, peoplesbudgetla.com, that we want everybody to say where they want their resources to go. We have been reached out to by City Council saying that they want a presentation to City Council on people's budget. So we'll continue to do that, and we'll continue to grow that work and push and remind folks that we have power on the outside to make things happen.
Well, we want to thank you for your time. And before we get ready to wrap up here, I know that on Monday you needed a certain amount of signatures regarding the death of Christopher DeAndre Mitchell, who was murdered by the police. And did you want to invite the listening audience to sign the petition and give a little bit of background?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, Christopher DeAndre Mitchell was killed by Torrance police in December of 2018 in a really rare occurrence because of consistent organizing. And I mean consistent organizing. We were in Torrance every single Tuesday pushing folks. We showed up at the mayor's house repeatedly. Many of our folks were beaten as a result and abused as a result. In fact, you met Cam today, who's wheelchair bound as a result of one of those attacks inside Torrance City Council meeting. They were just a teenager still in high school when that happened. And so people sacrificed themselves for justice for Christopher DeAndre Mitchell. And we wound up getting both of the cops who killed Christopher, their names are Matthew Concannon and Anthony Chavez, were charged in the murder of Christopher DeAndre Mitchell. Another win was we did for a moment have what they call a progressive prosecutor in office in George Gascon. And so Gascon actually filed the charges, convened a grand jury, and then filed charges against those 2 murderous cops. The new district attorney, whose name is Nathan Hawkman, he's a right-wing Zionist Republican who changed his political party in order to win that seat. Nathan Hawkman has filed a motion to dismiss the charges against those killer cops. And so the petition is to tell Nathan Hawkman not to drop the charges against the Torrance cops, and people can sign it at tinyurl.com/sign4Christopher. tinyurl.com/sign4Christopher, and they can follow BLM Los Angeles on Instagram, BLM LA on X, and Black Lives Matter Los Angeles on Facebook to get those links. Our goal is to deliver, or was to deliver, at least 1,000 signatures to the district attorney on Monday. He's agreed to have a community meeting with us on Monday. Our goal was to deliver 1,000 signatures. We're now at 1,200. So let's see how many signatures we can get to say resoundingly to Nathan Hawkman that we demand that those cops be prosecuted for the murder of our people. So again, that link is tinyurl.com/sign4Christopher. So please sign it and share it. It takes about 30 seconds.
Well, we want to thank you, Dr. Melina Abdullah, Professor of Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA and lead organizer with Black Lives Matter Grassroots, for all the work that you do. We thank you so much, and we stand in solidarity.
Thank you, Sister Tej. Appreciate you. Love you.
Love you. And in closing, we'd like to thank our guest, Ron Wilkins. Thank you, Dr. Melina Abdullah, and all those who made today's program possible. Our program, as well as prior programs, can be reheard for the next 60 days. Go to kpfk.org, audio archives, scroll to Freedom Now. Thank you to our producers, Dr. Gerald Horne, Sister Flora, Sister Femi, Brother Brandon, and our board ops, Sylvester. Signing off for Freedom Now, this is Sister Tej, and until next week, as always, we stand ready for revolution.
We state these facts only to let you know that those of us who are revolutionary, Pan-Africanists, is not because we love revolution. It is historically determined, and we have no alternative but to follow history and to use history for the benefit of our people.